Hey guys, talk about FRGT. Crazy penny runner. Took two trades. I'll go over the thinking behind them. I'll focus on the chart. First one was shorting out of the unhalt bounce, which I usually wouldn't do, but I was very bearish this pre-market and market open price action. This is actually one of the rare situations where in a strong market, I think a high day clear out is really, really good. Sadly, I wasn't smart enough to insta short it out of the unhalt. Even though it actually wasn't a bad idea in many ways. We'll talk about why. And then they had a nice. I added here. I was only in like 40% of my position because this wasn't really like A plus. This was A plus though. This was super good. But yeah, they did a neat little trick where they swiped this 104 support. They had an instant. It was like 12-cent reclaim, and they hit a hidden seller up here. I shorted. I got like 108s. But now my average was like not very good. It was like, I don't know, 114, 115. So I took a cover on the first flush. At flush, I was like, let me just take a partial. Um, and then we'll talk about the rest. I got out here because somebody flashed 120,000 shares on the ask on this bounce. Usually when you get like extreme size ask, like if you get an ask, it's like 10 or 20 times higher than what all the other numbers have been up to that point. So, if, like, for example, if you have an ask, if the ask was showing 10,000 shares and it's suddenly showing 150,000 shares, especially on these like manipulated low floats, a lot of times they're doing that to control a stock, right? They're purposely showing that size on the ask to prevent people from buying and to prevent the stock from going up. So I was actually, which is actually potentially bullish in this situation because we see lower high, lower high, lower high, and they like to squeeze lower highs on the backside, right? This is, you know, dump from high at A, dump from here, dump from, you get all these down only, down only, down only. Um, they'll start painting a backside structure to squeeze. And I didn't know if this was gonna, after this 120,000 share S wasn't there anymore, this on this candle, I was like, you know what, my averages are very good. Let me just get out. And then I shorted up here. I shorted the long trap at the top. This is the aggressive push off of support. Broke every single lower high. This is kind of like your little retail pullback, and I just went in right away in the high 120s, and then I added right before the crack, and then I covered, and I was super unlike here where I'm scalping because my average is not very good. Here my average is near the top. This is a beautiful final kind of liquidity move. This has a lot of potential for big fades. My average is better, and this is just a better setup than this, right? So I was a lot more confident in holding, and I just covered in the washes, covered in the wash. I was going to hold for the 5-minute 200, but then it kind of started consolidating towards the end of day here, and I'm like, you know what? I'll just take out the rest near these bids at 70 cents, and I just took it out. So it ended up being about a 40% trade. So we'll go over why. We'll talk about some stuff on. Let's focus on the chart. Where's There we go. Wait, no. There we go. Let's focus on the chart on this one. So penny runners in the pre-market. So I don't even short penny runners, so I wasn't getting caught in any of these pushes. Only thing you gotta know about these pushes is that penny runners have a ton of continuation. I keep saying that penny runners, my long friends have made most of their money logging pennies in 2023. A lot of these names are super bottomed out. We're seeing liquidity come back into the market. We're seeing the indexes make these big moves. We're seeing the IWM break out. We're seeing small caps make bigger and bigger moves. So, a lot of these super bottomed out penny names are making big moves, right? There's a lot of continuation in these names. And I just know a lot of my long only friends, I mean, they're just making tons of money on pennies. So, like, this whole time I'm just watching this and I'm like, you could see on the book, I won't even show you the book, but the book, there's tons of bids here, tons of bids here. There's just stacking bids, stacking bids, stacking bids. I did take one. I like scalped this long here. It wasn't even big size. It was just the book map looked really nice once it got really, really tight around here. But yeah, I mean, pennies are just strong, man, and they make a lot of moves. But let's talk about this, right? So this is very interesting. You see this once in a while where I am overall super bearish stocks that make big moves in the market open. You'll see this in low floats. You'll see stocks make like, I would say 200, maybe at least 150% to like 300% moves, like somewhere in a very overextended range. I'm talking like, a couple 100%, um, and sometimes even more. A lot of those stocks that go on these massive pre-market squeezes are super weak at market open. They tend to top out relatively quickly. And I was telling my Discord this. I was like, hey, a lot of stocks that make big pushes like this actually are pretty weak because they'll use market open volume to dump the stock essentially. So we saw this on a couple different plays. It doesn't mean it can't squeeze one a few times, but I&M not that long ago did something very similar to this on this day. 1024. IWM again, massive pre-market squeeze. It made another squeeze, but then just topped out and faded right away. So was BPTH one? God, there's actually been a lot of these this year. Was it this day? No. I'm gonna find more examples because it's very constructive to see what these are. This day, 1-5, beginning of the year. Here's another one that I remember. BLPH again started from 90 cents, opened at 3.5, just topped. See, a lot of these things that like make these 300% moves into pre-market, a lot of them top right away. Especially in low float land. It's a quite bearish pattern. So I remember all these plays, and I always like try to remember that lesson. I was like, yeah, that thing went on a crazy 200, 300% run into pre-market, opened right at the top, and maybe makes one more high, and then just gets slammed. So I consider this to be very bearish, right? I was like, this is a very bearish thing. Now they walked it down and up halted it at market open. I always tell my Discord, I was like, if I don't have a read, it was during this consolidation, I was like, I'm probably just gonna wait for market open, guys. Like, the odds of this price action giving some type of insane long trap that's just gonna go straight down is pretty low. Like, I didn't think this was that significant of a candle. Uh, so a lot of times, if something's really strong in the market open, I'm like, you know what? This thing has so much volume, so much volatility, so much range. You could just wait for market open. You can see what happens. And I don't really touch 930 candles in most situations, and it just up halted right away. I was like, oh, it up halted, but I was still bearish the structure. I was like, well, um, it'll probably top relatively quickly, but I was going to try to make a read on it. I was like, all right, it's going to unhalt. I'll wait a minute or two, see what happens. But then what happened was that they just dumped it right away. So, I always say don't short out of downhalts because it's usually a very bad idea. We've seen over and over again that on manipulated stocks, especially if it downhalts near high a day, we've seen soak at the bottom with a squeeze. So I was like, all right, it might be a little bullish. Let me just wait. And then, I saw the bounce. I saw this big soak hitting this like 125 guy. This push hitting this 125 guy. I'm like, all right, let me just put a little bit on, just because on the book, I'll just go to the book here, and that's right, here. I'm not really seeing. There's nothing a whole lot on the book. Um, I did like God, these orders that are right. I saw the 125 guy up here. I saw this push get soaked, and there's some bit support, but it was kind of farther down, like near the bottom of these lows. So I'm like, all right, let me just go into 120s. I saw this guy get a little thicker. The book looked, it wasn't totally clear. But I thought, all right, this 125 guy just keeps holding on me, and I was overall bearish the pre-market structure. That I was just, let me just go in a little bit. And it seemed to work, even though, like, in this market, downhalts don't mean a whole lot. That's the thing. Like, a stock of downhalt, that doesn't mean you're going to nail a 40% short, right? If anything, it baits short sellers into cheesing, and you have the potential to get squeezed on the backside, right? So, downhalts in this market, not super exciting, believe it or not. Like, you'd think being short and then a stock down holds feels great. And you know, in some contexts, that's true, but some other contexts, it's you have to kind of shift your expectations, right? So I thought this was interesting, right? This like 104 support was holding, bounced off $1, which people are gonna dip by kind of no matter what, because there's a big bid down here, and then it just pushes right into these declining MAs. Like, and I saw 110 and 111 get super heavy. You could see it, and you could see that actually on the book map. You could see all the buying come in, and you could see it stall. So here's all the buying. So here's the one bounce bid, and that, by the way, this crack takes out all these bids, right? So there's a bunch of bids here. Those bids get taken out, and then when it comes back up, now those bids aren't there anymore, right? You got to remember that. It's like, hey, there's a bunch of bids, so now this has potential to be even more bearish because if retail chases all this buying here, and you can see the green bubbles, right? All these bubbles right here. Here's where it starts to stall. All that buying dries up right away. I just get in right away. I'm like, dude, I think this ain't even going to continue. I think people are just going to dip buy off of one. And then, yeah, long story short, cracks, and I just took some profit right away down here because we got the same thing, but on the flip side, right? We have a big crack, but now we have empty space, right? So there's a lot of risk, and there's bids. You can see the bids down here. So it's like there's a lot of risk in having a bad average and then trying to hold for a 30-40% fade, right? So it was on this bounce. The book map isn't showing it because the order was not on uh, DX feed. So DX feed is what I use for my book map. The order was not showing, which is why it's important to also read your level two, in case there's orders on the level two that you can't see on book map. So there was like a 130,000 share ask here, and here it was following this down, it was following this down, and it was pushing it down. And like I said, that could be very, very bullish. But an important thing I want to talk about is for anyone who made it this far in the video, because this is really important. Like, there are times where the microstructure, right? So the microstructure is pretty much what has happened in the past, like anywhere from like 10 to 30, 40 minutes, right? It's like, what is in terms of like in terms of this pullback from high day, what is the market maker doing? This is kind of like the microstructure, right? So the microstructure here is very controlled selling, controlled walk down, which on strong manipulated stocks is potentially bullish, right? They like to squeeze backside shorts chasing, right? But there's kind of like the more macro structure, and the macro structure is, how did this move get up to where it's at? What are some possible bearish elements? You know, like I said, like 300% move opening up near market open, no, open up at its highs at market open. I consider that bearish. Actually, in this context, I consider this up halt into a high day clear out to be bearish because of how the stock moved up. So from a more like bigger macro picture, I'm bearish the stock, but on a microstructure level, I'm bullish the structure. I was like, especially once I saw 130,000 share ask show up here, I was like, man, they can really pull that ask and rip it, which is why I got out in this candle. It's like, but I'm still like, in my mind, I'm still like bearish the overall structure. So I'm like, all right, what's like a bearish pattern? Well, a bearish pattern is a super aggressive move off of support, right? That everyone thinks is going to break high day, and then we have every single lower high getting taken out, right? This lower high got taken out, this lower high, and now we know the answer why there's a 125 hidden seller here. There's a 125 hidden seller here to paint the stock for the backside squeeze. Isn't that interesting? Like, they're putting hidden sellers and big ask at these levels to push the stock down so they can do a backside move and then pull it, right? So it's very interesting how certain price action at certain levels earlier in the day has an effect on the stock later in the day, right? Very interesting. Yeah. So we got, I told my Discord, I was like, hey, it's bouncing off VWAP. I'm expecting some type of aggressive initiation. I'm waiting for some type of aggressive move through these lower highs, right? And I got out and I saw this push, and once this push started stalling and started pulling back with lower volume, I was like, oh, this is great. I was like, this is really, 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 really good, because now we swiped every lower high, and now either the next push has to go or it's gonna fade, right? It's kind of like, this is kind of like a do or die moment up here, right? It really is. And what's great about this push is that if we zoom out, and that's this push right here. This is the 1030 push. What's amazing about these aggressive bounces off of support is that there's no bids, right? They're taking out ass, but there's actually no bid support down here, which is why it's so bearish, right? And it's really on this second push right here that I saw, that I saw the ass get stacked, and I saw 130 get touched, but then the buying slowed down after this candle, and I just shorted here. I shorted I had like 128, so I was shorting right here. I was like, this is great, this is perfect. And then I just happened to, I wanted to add some more of my shares, and once this little move didn't go, I was especially bearish after this move didn't go, because I was actually telling my Discord, I was like, if this, most ideal long trap at the top and then pull, but if a long trap is going to fail and it's going to squeeze high a day, often what they do is they pull it back. They do a very like thin soaking type of flag where it's like flagging, and then they push, right? So it's like they'll keep holding. You'll see this on really strong stocks where it's like you get this type of aggressive long trap, you get a pullback, you're like, man, my short's working, I'm a genius, and then it does like 10, 20, 30 minutes of soaking at support and then rips, right? So I was like, well, that's a possibility. I'm looking at the book, and I'm like, you know what am I risking? Well, I see an ask here, I see an ask here. I'm like, okay, it at least it has to get through these two guys, right? So I'm looking at, especially this guy up here. I was like, okay, like I have a good average from this short. Let me just keep an eye on these two guys. And then once this second little push didn't go and started pulling back, I'm like, oh man, there's all these higher lows, right? You can see the higher lows here. I'm gonna short into the trend break, right? Just a little, just to add. I want to do that as like a main short, but to add the rest of my shares, right? And yeah, kind of the rest is history. It down halted here, and I thought, great, this is this long trap looks amazing. The reaction is amazing. This is everything I want. I thought they might soak on the 1 minute 200 and at least do like a mini backside move. I thought like, all right, this is like 45 minutes of weakness, controlled weakness, and I'm like, all right, maybe they do one little clear out move and pull it or something like that, and then they ended up just going straight down. And by the way, I really should have held for the 5 minute 200. Look at this. I covered here. I should follow my rules, man. Just cover here. Look at that. Right at end of day. But really nice. So yeah. Decent reads. I wish I could say I had the patience to wait for this move, but I thought this weakness. I thought this seller was just gonna shut. I was so bearish this price action that I wanted to get in on the first sign of weakness on this bounce. And when I saw these big soaks hitting this seller, I just wanted to get in. I ended up like maybe making a little bit of money or losing a little bit of money on this, like when I got stopped out the rest of my shares here, but this was a huge trade. So yeah, crazy stock, great topping action. Just sometimes it's going to be hard to wait for this exact move when you have bearish elements going on over here. So yeah, FRGT, interesting, penny runner. And yeah, man, the book and the pre-market. I'll just, there's a little bonus. I'll show you that at the. There's like infinite bids on this thing. Bids, 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 right? More bids. There's bids, and then it just went crazy. And then it just like it went straight up. Like I did not like. I thought it was gonna like, maybe squeeze to 110s or something and pull back, but But yeah, I didn't, by the way, I don't short this, guys. I don't short any of this because I wait for structure. I wait for the pullback, or I wait for some type. I wait for something like you know, something like this or something like this, right? Stuff where I can read, um, where there's some type of consolidation and some type of move that I can read. Like this price action is just up only. This is just 1 minute 9 up only. Like this is just bouncing off the MA and squeezing and squeezing. Like there's no read. There's no read there. On strong stocks, like trust me, man. Most of it's oh my god, dude. It's just man. Oh my god, look at this. I covered at like 0.71 and it cracked another 10% from my covers. Insane. Just what a stock. Anyways, that's FRGT. And yeah, have a good one, guys. Information down below about my Discord.